In 1997, a quiet suburban mansion in California concealed a belief that would soon become one of America's darkest mysteries. Inside, 39 individuals lived under strict discipline, and convinced their existence was only preparation for departure beyond Earth itself alone. They called their group Heaven's Gate, believing humanity's true purpose was to abandon Earth and ascend into a higher realm of existence. What began as spiritual searching slowly transformed into absolute certainty, leaving no space for doubt, fear, or outside influence whatsoever. Their leaders taught that a spacecraft hidden behind the Hale Bopp comet would soon arrive to carry them to safety. As the comet grew brighter in the night sky, their belief deepened into an unshakable expectation of imminent salvation coming. Outside observers saw only a quiet community, unaware that radical psychological control was reshaping every thought inside the mansion completely. Members slowly cut ties with families, leaving behind names, identities, and personal histories in pursuit of transcendence itself beyond Earth. Communication with the outside world became rare, replaced by rigid teachings and repetitive instruction that shaped their daily reality completely. Every day followed strict routines, reinforcing the belief that detachment from physical existence was the only path forward for them. Behind calm expressions, a deeper psychological transformation was unfolding that outsiders could neither see nor fully understand at that time. The group believed their physical bodies were temporary vessels, destined to be discarded before entering a higher spiritual realm beyond. As isolation increased, the outside world faded completely, replaced by a single shared vision of cosmic departure and transformation itself. Friends and families attempting intervention were often met with silence, emotional distance, or complete separation without explanation at all times. Inside the mansion, preparation for what they believed was final departure began taking a more structured and controlled form gradually. Belief had now replaced doubt entirely, leaving no room for hesitation, uncertainty, or external questioning of their mission whatsoever left. Outside, life in America continued normally, unaware that a quiet psychological collapse was unfolding behind closed doors, silently occurring inside. The Hale Bopp comet became brighter each night, intensifying their certainty. Salvation was approaching closer than ever before them. What they saw as preparation for transcendence was, in reality, a step toward an irreversible and final conclusion itself now. Inside that silence, the final stage of Heaven's Gate was already unfolding, unseen by the world outside at that moment. As days passed, group members entered deeper isolation, convinced that Earth itself was a temporary prison for human souls awaiting release. Inside the mansion, mirrors of identity disappeared, replaced by uniform clothing, identical routines, and silent obedience to spiritual authority figures. Members believed emotional attachment to Earth would prevent their transition, so every connection was deliberately severed without hesitation whatsoever in silence. Each morning began with ritual discipline, reinforcing the idea that their physical existence was no longer meaningful or permanent now. Outside the walls, the world moved forward normally, completely unaware of the psychological transformation occurring behind closed doors, silently unfolding. The Hale Bopp comet became a symbol of destiny, interpreted as undeniable proof that their salvation was approaching rapidly now. Leadership reinforced the belief that departure from Earth required absolute surrender, demanding complete trust in unseen cosmic guidance itself completely. Gradually, individuality dissolved, replaced by collective identity, where every member shared the same vision of ascension beyond life itself now. Even doubt was reframed as weakness, and questioning the doctrine became a forbidden act within the group structure itself entirely. As the comet brightened, internal urgency grew stronger, creating an atmosphere of inevitability that none could escape any longer now. Daily life became increasingly ritualized, every movement carefully controlled to align with the belief in imminent transition from Earth itself. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a sealed environment preparing occupants for departure beyond reality itself. Outside world news no longer mattered, replaced entirely by internal teachings and repeated cosmic interpretation of their final journey. Psychological dependence deepened as members relied solely on leadership for meaning, direction, and perceived spiritual truth within the group. Every external influence was removed systematically, ensuring complete isolation from any opposing worldview or criticism whatsoever from outside the world. The idea of Earth as corrupt and temporary became absolute doctrine, repeated daily until fully internalized by all members without resistance. Isolation created a closed psychological loop where belief reinforced behavior and behavior reinforced belief without interruption of any external input. Hope of ascension replaced fear of death, transforming mortality into something they believed was simply transition beyond physical existence itself, completely now unfolding. Leadership emphasized that the comet was not coincidence but confirmation of long-awaited cosmic arrival sign from beyond Earth itself. As belief intensified, emotional control tightened, leaving individuals completely dependent on the group's shared reality without question or doubt remaining. Inside the mansion, silence became constant, broken only by soft voices repeating teachings that reinforced their shared cosmic expectation every hour. Members no longer questioned time itself, as days and nights blurred into a single, continuous state of controlled spiritual anticipation. The outside world felt increasingly distant, as if Earth itself had already begun fading away from their psychological reality entirely now. Each follower believed they were being prepared individually for transfer, yet remained physically together under strict collective discipline and control. The comet in the sky was studied obsessively, every movement interpreted as communication from a higher intelligence guiding their fate. Leadership framed every emotional reaction as part of the final purification process, removing hesitation and strengthening surrender to belief system. As isolation deepened further, personal memories of life before the group began to feel distant and unreal to many members. Identity dissolution continued quietly, with individuals referring to themselves less by name and more as part of a collective mission. Every object inside the mansion became symbolic, from clothing to furniture, reinforcing the idea that earthly attachments were temporary illusions. The group's worldview narrowed until only one truth remained: that departure from Earth was not optional but inevitable and necessary. Outside contact was now completely absent, leaving the group inside a sealed psychological environment with no competing reality or influence. Daily rituals became more synchronized, as if every movement was preparing them for a final coordinated transition beyond physical existence. Even fear was refrained into acceptance, taught as a final obstacle before reaching what they believed was higher consciousness awaiting them. The mansion itself felt increasingly like a waiting chamber, where time had stopped and only preparation for departure remained active. Members often spoke in calm tones, masking deep emotional surrender that had replaced their former individual personalities entirely over time. Every instruction from leadership was treated as absolute truth, leaving no space for interpretation, doubt, or personal resistance anymore. As belief reached its peak, external reality no longer held meaning compared to the certainty of their anticipated ascension event. The comet's presence in the sky was now seen as undeniable confirmation that their long-awaited journey was approaching completion. Psychological control had become so complete that even silence felt guided, as if every moment carried hidden instruction within it. Inside that controlled world, the final steps toward their collective fate were already forming without any awareness from outside observers. The final days inside the mansion carried an unsettling calm, as if every member had already accepted a destiny that could not be changed. Rooms remained dimly lit, filled with quiet movement, where each person followed instructions without hesitation or visible emotion anymore. The belief in departure had replaced all ordinary thought, shaping every action into preparation for what they called the next level. Outside, the world continued its normal rhythm, completely unaware that a sealed reality was reaching its irreversible conclusion within. The comet in the night sky still burned brightly, interpreted as a final guiding signal leading them toward salvation beyond Earth. Leadership maintained absolute control, reinforcing the idea that surrender was not tragedy, but the highest form of spiritual achievement possible. Members began to view time differently, as if each passing hour brought them closer to a predetermined and sacred transition point. Personal identity had now fully dissolved, leaving only collective purpose and shared conviction guiding every decision made inside the house. Even conversations became minimal, replaced by silence that felt intentional, as if words were no longer necessary for understanding. Every corner of the mansion carried symbolic meaning, reinforcing the belief that physical space itself was part of their preparation process. Sleep and wakefulness blended into routine cycles that no longer reflected normal human life outside the group's controlled environment. Emotional detachment had reached its peak, where memories of the outside world existed only as distant echoes without relevance anymore. The idea of return to Earth was completely absent, replaced by the certainty that departure was permanent and final in nature. Leadership emphasized readiness, shaping final instructions as sacred steps toward what they believed was a higher, existence beyond physical form. Outside communication remained completely severed, leaving no interruption between belief and action within the isolated psychological system. The mansion felt less like a place and more like a suspended moment waiting for an unseen cosmic signal to complete itself. As anticipation peaked, every follower believed they were standing at the edge of transformation that humanity was never meant to witness. The comet's light became almost spiritual in their perception, reinforcing the conviction that their journey was already in motion. Inside that silence, the final phase of Heaven's Gate was no longer approaching. It had already quietly begun. What followed was not chaos in their minds, but a calm certainty that everything had already been decided long before that moment arrived. Inside the mansion, instructions were carried out with quiet precision, as if each step had been rehearsed across an entire lifetime. The atmosphere carried no visible panic, only a deep surrender shaped by years of isolation and controlled belief systems working together. Outside, the world remained unaware, continuing its ordinary routines while a hidden reality reached its final irreversible turning point. The Hale Bopp comet still burned in the night sky, seen not as an object of science, but as a divine confirmation. For the group, that light represented arrival, a signal that their long-awaited transition was now fully aligned with destiny itself. Leadership maintained a steady presence, reinforcing the final interpretation of events as sacred completion rather than loss or tragedy. Members moved through their environment slowly, as if time itself had become heavier and more meaningful in those final hours. Personal identity had completely dissolved, replaced by a shared psychological state where individuality no longer carried any significance at all. Every object in the house felt charged with symbolic meaning, reinforcing the belief that physical existence was only temporary preparation. Silence dominated most rooms, broken only by brief exchanges that reflected acceptance rather than fear or hesitation at that stage. The idea of Earth had become distant and irrelevant, almost like a memory from a life that no longer belonged to them. Even emotional responses were softened into calm acceptance, shaped by years of internal conditioning and reinforced collective ideology. The mansion itself felt like a threshold space, no longer part of ordinary reality, but suspended between two believed worlds. Outside signals, news, and communication no longer existed within their perception, leaving only internal doctrine as absolute truth. As the final stage approached, belief and action became indistinguishable, merging into a single coordinated psychological state. The comet's presence was now seen as proof that transition was not approaching but already unfolding in real time. Every follower believed they were fulfilling their ultimate purpose, completing a journey they had prepared for across many years. Inside that sealed silence, the final moment was no longer expected. It was already silently in motion.